This is a time of great opportunity for BHP. The resources we produce are essential to the energy transition and global economic growth. Our products are fundamental to the way we live now and into the future. Now more than ever, we need to provide the world the resources it needs responsibly and sustainably. Imagine what we can achieve if we continue to think big.
Welcome, Malcolm. It's delightful to see you today.
Hello, Jacqui. Good to see you as well.
Terrific. So today we're chatting about all things COVID-19, and I would be really interested, as I'm sure many of the guests of IMARC would be, to hear about your company's areas of focus as COVID-19 emerged as a real pandemic risk to the world.
Well, certainly in this really unprecedented times, the key focus, first of all, was the safety of our people, and getting people used to social distancing, wearing masks, having tests, being very conscious of just how serious this problem was when it first emerged, because we didn't understand just the extent to which it would develop. So that was the key focus, I think, on all the organisations I've been involved in, both in the mining and the manufacturing sectors supporting mining. The other big focus was the travel restrictions which started to emerge. So with fly-in, fly-out operations, for example, or with sites in areas where people couldn't travel, and that's both to offices, which we've seen in lockdown situations, and in some countries you couldn't travel to plants or to mines. So how to deal with that became quite a big focus for us, and people have responded tremendously well to that. For example, in fly-in, fly-out operations, BHP employees moved to Perth because of the closing of the borders that were coming, and did that within days of these new restrictions. In other examples, in Orica, people have been sleeping on manufacturing sites in places like the Philippines and Mongolia for up to 4 months because they haven't been able to travel. And so it's just been really encouraging and quite extraordinary the way people have responded. And then the third focus in the people area is just how do you keep in touch with people? And this sort of technology, of course, has made that so much easier. And then from a business point of view, the integration of new businesses, new IT, new people, so people joining, has been an interesting challenge. Again, in Orica, we bought a new business in Peru and settled, I think, on the day that COVID just took off in that country. So the whole integration process has had to be done remotely through video links and emails and so on. And it's gone, again, remarkably well because of the cooperation of people. Integrating a new SAP system in one of the organisations, which under any circumstances is trying, has proven to be a big challenge, but again, gone well because people have understood they need to make a special effort for that to happen. And then when you hire new people and then they're unable to get to meet their teams or trying to understand a new company just by sitting in an office on their own has been a special challenge, I think, for all of us. So those are particular challenges. And then the supply chains. So again, in Orica, we might, with detonators, make some parts in India, some parts in Canada or Scandinavia, and assemble it on site in Brazil. So getting those parts around the world during COVID has been quite an issue, but again, gone remarkably seamless. And then the final one that all of us face is cost control. How do you keep costs from blowing out, or indeed, how do you reduce costs in these challenging environments? So both in the people sense and the business sense, the need to move quickly and effectively, I think, was the main impact as this broke, as COVID started to expand.
Thanks, Malcolm. And from many perspectives, the mining and METS sector has done very well, both through managing the pandemic, but also managing business, kept operating, kept the expert on earnings for Australia firing. What do you attribute that to?
Well, I think our industries where safety is so ingrained, it's what we do. And we're very used to a culture of care, testing as we go in, even drug and alcohol testing or any sorts of testing, wearing PPE, having procedures. And really with COVID, what we've done is just add one more aspect. So I think for our people, it hasn't been so disruptive. I mean, it's been disruptive, particularly if you're in an underground mine, as you would know from your old Olympic Dam experiences. People are close together in confined spaces, and so there have been particular challenges, but I think we're really good at safety culture. That's been the primary thing. Secondly, I think our industries have been historically good at managing remote operations, be they remote sites, remote mines, remote plants. So increasingly, some companies already have virtual control rooms, for example, in the Pilbara, operating from Perth or from Brisbane or somewhere, and use of autonomous vehicles. And so the automation, keeping people away from each other and is something, it's a trend that's kind of we were going on anyway. And then the third reason I think we've done well, Jacqui, is that demand for our products has remained strong. And we, despite all the flack that gets thrown at China these days, thank goodness for China, because they continue to buy all of our iron ore, all of our coal, nickel, copper, all of the products that we sell have had very strong demand, particularly out of China. And I think that has been, so our basic business hasn't sort of gone down, or if you're in an airline, disappeared completely. So our industries have managed from a financial point of view to remain fairly strong.
Yeah, I think they're excellent points. From what you've seen go well through the pandemic, what trends do you think will accelerate post the pandemic?
Oh, look, I think, Jacqui, I think certainly the technology trend will pick up pace. It's received a big boost as part of COVID. So what we're doing right now, for example, sure, this technology was around, but the technology itself has improved dramatically. But people's comfort and use and using it every day, nearly everyone does this now. So the trend in technology in terms of communications, and therefore the need probably to travel, will be reduced somewhat, if not a lot. People won't need to go into the office every day. Whether we do or not, I think remains to be seen. And indeed, the remote or increased autonomy or autonomous working mines and at plants, I think that trend will accelerate. Because I suspect we're going to get used to a sort of a socially distanced future, if you know what I mean. We'll be a little bit more aware of the impact of working closely together. The second big trend will be, I think, and it'll be interesting to see how this develops, is the environmental trend. So, and particularly, of course, the global warming debate. And I'm not quite sure how that's going to play out. One argument says that people, having been at home and reflected on the world and being much more in touch with their families and so on, will accelerate the pressure for environmental change and for emissions reductions and so on. On the other hand, you've just got economic necessity. So countries in particular, and companies and individuals will be under a lot more pressure. So what I think is that we will see coming out of this slower economic growth because of the government debt, really. And we will also see some changes in behaviour. So, for example, if you're looking at fossil fuels in general and say oil in particular, I actually think you'll see slower economic growth. So you'll see prices lower, but you'll also see people using cars more because there'll be a fear factor around public transport. Mm-hmm. And so that will slow down the transition, I think, to renewables. Having said that, the practical reality is that people want renewable energy. Renewable energy now, if you've got, say, solar energy, is cheaper than any of the alternatives that we've traditionally supplied. The reality, though, is that storage capacity, battery, if you like, or other forms of storage, are just not available yet at an industrial scale. And so we've got this transition period where I think renewables plus gas is the obvious answer. If you're building a new power station today, that's what you would do. Having said that, existing, say, coal-fired power stations will continue for a long time, and indeed new ones are being built in Asian countries, for example. So we will see, but the facts are, irrespective of what you individually might think about the scientific debate of climate change, individuals have been convinced about it, and individuals are putting pressure on their super funds and hence on fund managers and banks who provide us with our funds to be much more cognizant of our emissions in particular and the fuel sources. So that's just the reality, and we've just got to face up to that. But I think the trend might be a bit slower than we think because of COVID. The third area post-COVID, I think, will be this fragmentation of globalization, which has started with Donald Trump and the China thing and so on, will continue. And that's not necessarily a good thing for our industries. We've done really well out of globalization. I think the disruption that causes is something we'll have to keep an eye on. And associated with that, we've seen social disruption. So, for example, in Chile and Latin America generally, we're seeing a lot of COVID has kind of ignited social issues, and therefore we've just got to watch that, because that, together with the massive government debt that people have taken on in every country, means the pressure on our industry, because who's going to pay for all this? increased social security payments and increased government debt repayments. In the end, it's the likes of us. And so we need to be cognizant of both royalty and income tax increases.
Great, thanks, Malcolm. And in terms of bringing it to a close, what do you think if this continues? Just briefly, will have to be. If this continues, what do you think the impact is going to be on society if the travel restrictions, etc., continue?
Oh, I think in society generally, but particularly in our industry, it's how do you keep relationships going? Because the whole world runs on relationships, and relationships build trust. So, here's a $5 note. That's just, all that says is I trust that you will take that and give me $5 of goods. World leaders put a lot of store in meeting each other because of building trust. And if you can't have physical contact and physical relationships, I think that's that whole culture of companies, countries, and the way that we work together is really the biggest issue. Impacts on mental health, travel, and so on are also important. But I just think trust and relationships are the ones that we have to watch.
Thank you, Malcolm, and a wonderful way to close. I think you've covered some really interesting topics there, and I'm sure all the attendees of IMARC will have enjoyed the opportunity to hear your perspectives. Thank you.
Thanks, Jacqui. Thanks for the opportunity.